Hi there, this is Peter Yarrow, and I'm talking to Rabbi Sol Solomon, and looking forward to sharing this time with you on Days Gone By UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, shalom, my friends. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, here with you, and we're going to be talking to a legend. If not for the group that this man was in, would Bob Dylan have become famous? It's hard to tell. He could have become a hairdresser because they did so many of his songs and helped make him famous. And if not for this man that we have on the telephone, would we even have the song Puff the Magic Dragon? We might have had the Puff the Magic Marmot, for all we know. This is the man who co-wrote that song. He also wrote Day Is Done and Torn Between Two Lovers. He is, and I love this, he is the winner of the Miami Jewish Federation's Tikkun Olam Award for helping repair the world. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable, a legend on the phone with us, singer, songwriter, activist, music legend, Peter Yarrow. Shalom to you.
Shalom to you, Rabbi. What a wonderful introduction.
Oh, well,
your enthusiasm is, of course, characteristic of you and widely appreciated, I know.
Well, thank you, and ever so. And how could I not be enthusiastic talking to a man who helped reshape the idea of popular music back in the early 1960s? But before we even get to that, I want to make sure about something. Your pre-Ellis Island family name, was it was Yaroshevitz?
Yaroshevich, and it was from Russia, but the portion of Russia that is now Ukraine. Both of my parents were Russian Jewish immigrants. They both came from what was then called Elizabethgrad and is now called Kirovograd. And I have been in Ukraine 3 times. It's very moving. It's very stark because there are historic realities there in terms of the genocide that was part of that era that are staggering and painful. But it's also true that when I was over there, I was with a group of Jewish young people in their 20s who were rediscovering their Jewish roots together. There was an organization from Israel that had brought in a couple of people that were exposing them to their own history, which was very new to them because Judaism was practiced in secret in the Soviet Union, and then in the period during which refuseniks Jews were allowed to leave Russia or the Soviet Union at the time, the Jewish population disappeared. But the practice and awareness of Jewishness was really suppressed extraordinarily. So it was quite an interesting event. As I remember, it was a Seder, or it may have been on a high holy day, I forget, but I was over there, and it happened to be such, and I was given that invitation. So, any event, that's where my mind went when you asked that question about my true last name. If my parents hadn't emigrated and I'd been born there, you would be calling me Piotr Yaroshevich.
Piotr Yaroshevich. But let me ask you, did your parents and your grandparents, did they tell stories of the old country? Did they have horror stories of pogroms themselves and things like that?
Well, it would have been my grandparents because my mother arrived when she was 3.
Oh, well, yeah.
And my father when he was 16, and those were never discussed. But he arrived around 1916. I think it was in the period post the intense pogroms and prior to the rise of fascism, but there was in Italy and in Germany, but there still was rampant anti-Semitism, I assure you.
Well, you don't have to assure me. I encounter it all the time, let me tell you. Talking about bummer, we're talking about pogroms and depression and anti-Semitism, but another kind of a sad topic, I didn't realize this, that your parents got a divorce when you were 5 years old. Did that have any kind of lasting impact on you, on your music, on your emotions as a person?
Well, yes, of course, it always does, and even more so on my sister. In those days, see, in today's world, divorce and the separation of parents is very frequently amicable and the parents continue to be friends, and they remarry, and there are mixed families. But at the time, it was a shanda, which translated from that Yiddish term, it was a source of shame, and you couldn't actually get a divorce when you were in that period of time, which was 1940, because I was born in 38. Not in New York. You had to go and establish residence in Nevada, and then after a certain period of residence, you could get a divorce. But yeah, it was very troubling to me, and I found at a very early age a refuge in a sense of creating the wholeness of myself within the arts, within painting, and played the violin, and I sang. So that was, as you might imagine, very therapeutic.
Oh, absolutely. And you went to Cornell University, where you were going to be a painter, an art student, but then one particular class, not that you were taking, but that you were teaching, sort of flipped the script?
Well, it did. I actually entered as a physics major. I got the physics prize in high school, so I thought that would be meaningful, and I thought my direction would ultimately be in industrial art or design of that sort. But I wanted to get a good academic education as well. My mother was a school teacher. So I majored in physics, and then I came to the conclusion I would not be a brilliant physicist. So I switched to experimental psychology, and that's what I got my degree in. But I also got an instructorship in a class in folk music, English 355, 356, taught by the renowned Professor Harold Thompson. It was there that I realized the transformational power of music and how extraordinarily meaningful that could be for people who were feeling in an alienated society. And that's what Cornell was. All the schools were at that time. They were very, in terms of the kinds of value systems that emerged later on in the 60s, they were very backward. They were very prejudiced. They were very sexist. They were hierarchical. It was all about what fraternity you were in and how much money your
family endowed.
Father had. Well, it wasn't even family. Your father had. Women didn't have money in those days. They were relegated to either being housewives or librarians or nurses or school teachers in very meaningful ways. It was a dark period of time. It was alien to me because that wasn't what I grew up with and what I believed in. So it really had a profound effect on me because I had felt like a fish out of water when I was at Cornell. And I was, very much that. I was not a happy camper, but it was an academically very good school, and I had a couple of scholarships. And on a school teacher's salary, I did what the students did then. I washed dishes, and I got through school. But because of that class, I realized that it would be a change in the country and in the world, I felt, and that folk music would have a part in making that happen. And indeed, that's exactly what happened.
But what do you say now to people on the conservative side who say that colleges and universities have swung too far left, and all they do is want to complain about America, tear things down? Do you agree with that, or is it colleges should be really left?
Well, this is a very complicated topic for me to discuss.
Oh, okay.
I feel that the language of the right has been hijacked, and we have to get beyond these kinds of interpreting these slogans and these attacks as when insults are traded today, very, very, very dangerously vituperative and antagonistic in our period of time now. We tend to retreat to these slogans. We don't approach each other as real human beings and full human beings, and that's very, very destructive. I'm involved in a project that has really illuminated some things for me that are very important. term by Abraham Lincoln in his first inaugural, when after the Civil War he said, "We have to summon our better angels. We are not enemies, we are friends." And we got together over a 2.5-day period with 13 hours of exchanges, very carefully and very astutely put together by a very, very gifted person in this area. And at the end of the 2 days, these two oppositional sides, who might have been just treating each other in kind of knee-jerk, reflex ways, saying things that you hear all the time, had thoughtful times to hear each other's point of view and emerged, not changed in terms of their political perspective, but realizing that their fellow Americans, not the leaders of the country, not the people in office, not the president, but their fellow Americans were not incorrigible, that they could be addressed in rational terms, that they were good human beings that cared about the country, that had their own narrative, and they were nice.
You should have had them work on a health care bill, let me tell you.
That's true. This is only 16 people, but we made a documentary of it, and we're going into libraries and Rotary clubs throughout the country. We're just beginning, but we intend to have thousands and thousands and thousands of these. Illuminate at the grassroots level what needs to happen, and this is important. The Holocaust occurred because a certain dynamic existed in Nazi Germany that is being repeated here. And we have to prevent that from occurring. Then the population was severely divided in such a way. There was the persecution and targeting, and ultimately a genocidal perspective related to gypsies, Jews, mentally ill people, and homosexuals and lesbians. That hatred and that division within the people, which was fostered and encouraged, produced a result whereby the people could not stand together when the country was threatened with fascistic ways. It obscured the goodness within people because people were literally involved with permission. At Kristallnacht, Peter Yarrow speaks of the fact, he was a child then, that the principal of his school, he was in Vienna, said that this was coming, and he said there will be incidents in which Jews will be attacked in one way or another, and we are not going to discourage you from doing so. These were not his exact words, but this is what happened. In the same sense that you see Donald Trump saying, when somebody clocks somebody else in the chin and knocks him out in a rally, I'd like to punch him. I'll pay your lawyers. There was an encouragement of that kind of violence and pursuit of people. Now, if we as Americans are divided in this way, we pave the way for fascistic things to come about.
Yeah. The one element that's different is that the Holocaust happened coming out of a terrible depression. So as long as our economy keeps chugging away, I think we're okay. If it collapses...
I don't agree.
Really? Oh.
I do not think that because there is that distinction that you can say, for that reason, we are protected from this occurrence. The sheer, simple reality of the division of the people in this country, which is horribly hanging over our head, is the kind of division, if, for instance, Donald Trump were to say, everybody who has been deported from the United States into Mexico, if they come back, we're going to put them in an internment camp and use extraordinary rendition as we so desire. Okay? That means torture. I don't think that the fact that somebody has a job or not, and there's not a Great Depression, will at all affect our ability to either stand together and say no, or simply say, well, I'm a Republican and that's what he did and that's the law now, and you better respect the law. So I do not think that, first of all, it's untested. It's a hypothesis. You might say, is it possible the fact that we're not in dire economic straits going to prevent this phenomenon from occurring? We don't have any data that is a deterrent to the existence of this division. So I challenge that premise respectfully.
Oh, sure.
But it could be the case that having jobs prevents the occurrence of this, but I don't think that's the case, and that's number one. Number two, if you read the New Yorker this week of this small town in Colorado, which is Grand Junction, I think it is, and you see what the phenomenon is of hatred and opacity about the cruelty and dysfunctionality of the president, you will realize that the jobs that they have and the jobs that they've lost, the majority of the area, the square miles of the state, there is a phenomenon that we, of a progressive perspective, are not aware of. We stand mystified. We say, why is this happening? What possibly could have occasioned this alteration, whereby people do not see Donald Trump the way we do not see a cruel, pathologically lying, simplistic person who is incapable of even remotely taking on the responsibility of great meaning, let alone be the president.
But here's a question for you, Peter. Yeah. You've lived long enough. I mean, you're going to be, God willing, 80 in a year from now. So you lived through Nixon, but then you had Carter and Clinton. We've lived through, God help us, through George W. Bush, but then we got Obama. Can you at least see that sometimes these things are cyclical, and that once we wash our hands of Trump in, God willing, 3.5 years, if not 8, then we might get, I don't know, some hippie.
Well, for one thing, never have I seen this vitriol, hatred, and antagonism in our country simply between voters. Never have I seen in any of these very, very controversial elections.
Even 1968?
Yes.
Even,
Not even remotely.
Wow.
Even remotely. I'm not talking about dislike or even hatred of the leadership, but not fellow Americans. That never has occurred, where people say, if you voted this way, you are a disgrace, and I have nothing to say to you. And that is everywhere, and it is horrific. That's number one. Number two, to make analogies for a historian, I just read this as an article, is not a valid thing, because you have a pattern from before. It doesn't hold necessarily that it will repeat itself, because the wages of getting it wrong today are so much more intensely serious than they ever were. We never were in a situation where we're staring directly at the collapse of the environment in terms of a hospitable climate that will not cause tens of millions of deaths, hundreds of millions, if we don't reverse course. There's no time in history where we were told by science, 97% of them, that the fate of the world is in jeopardy in terms of our survival of life as anything we know about it. And we know that progress is incredibly rapid now. There has never been a time when we have been sitting on a situation where we have two really very, very disturbed people with their fingers on the atomic bomb. One of them being the president of
North Korea.
Yeah. And the other, Donald Trump, where Donald Trump is known to be so out of control that even though it's absolutely the case that every precedent for knowing that if he starts tweeting about Nika Brzezinski and
Joe Scarborough,
the Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, that it's going to hurt him. He cannot help himself. This is not a well person.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, Peter Yarrow, you obviously give a lot of your time to causes and speaking and putting these kinds of things together of where you have the 16 folks on different sides of the aisle. Did you ever consider going literally into politics yourself?
No, I'm best off doing what I'm doing. I'm very effective, thank you.
Okay.
And I organized a march on Washington in 1969 with Cora Weiss for 500,000 people. Had I been holding public office in some, city council, no, I would not have been effective. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested. People are needed in terms of the ways they can do their jobs best. I don't have the kinds of capacities, I do not believe, or the interest. I'm 79 years old in any event, but I never thought of running for public office. I'm an emulator of Pete Seeger. I admired him, and this is where I went with my life. And I'm very, very, very grateful to have that platform and that voice at this point. And when I come and sing, I will not be lecturing people or spouting off in this way. I will allude to these things through music. I will sing songs. I will sing. The children are listening. The children are listening. If we say something cruel and harsh, they will do the same. The children are listening. If they grow up to be bullies, we'll have ourselves to blame. That's a new song. And I will sing about where I say it's time to come together across the dividing lines for the children who are suffering with a pain in these our times. It's not just ridicule and taunts and bullying by their peers. Grown-ups' rage and hate-filled words are ringing in their ears. The children are listening. The children are listening. I will say these things musically, and I will sing Puff the Magic Dragon, and I will sing Leaving on a Jet Plane, and I will sing Blowing in the Wind, and it will be updated. It will be relevant to our own time. This is not an exercise in reminiscence or an exercise in some kind of nostalgia. This is strong, powerful stuff these days, and if you go to the Women's March, or you go to Standing Rock, which I have done, or you go to environmental anti-fracking or anti-pipeline rallies, you will be singing these songs and you will hear them. And so I am very, very much now not feeling I'm getting on stage and, let's remember when. No, we're not remembering when. We're living now, and we're using these tools now to express our feelings and our thoughts.
By the way, I should have mentioned earlier when we're talking to Peter Yarrow about hearing him sing these songs, old and new, you can go do that Sunday, August 6th. You will be at the Suffolk Theater in Riverhead, New York. For more information about that, go to peteryarrow.net, and you will be doing a benefit for animals. It's called Peter Pups and Music, a canine welfare benefit in Boulder, Colorado, right near us. That will be on August 18th over in Boulder on near Pine Street. So,
right, and what that is a consciousness raising and raising money for canine welfare, but specifically to stop the functioning of puppy mills, which is inhumane in the extreme. If you want a dog, you can find a dog, and you can, unless you need, like President Obama did, a specific breed. Yeah, there are times when you need an anti-allergic puppy, but otherwise, dogs are killed massive in the tens of thousands every day in the United States. Cannot do that. The way we treat, if we treated the cruelty with which puppy wills function, the conditions, the horrible conditions in which these puppies are traumatized, They perish, and then they come out and they're sickly. The way we treat animals is reflective of how we treat human beings and vice versa. And if we are kinder to animals and treat them well, it will make us kinder to each other. So that is the nature of that benefit there. Whereas my other performance is just a straight ahead, this is a concert. But these are things in my heart. And when I sing, I have the people actually put their arms around each other, sway together, and then look at each other and say, that was fun. And then I say, now look at each other and say, I don't know how you voted, but it's okay, we can still be friends. And they do, because I am dedicated to bringing this country together. I will fight like crazy, as I always have, for all the things that Peter, Paul, and Mary fought. And I expect them to fight for what they fight. But when it comes to demeaning and vilifying our fellow Americans, I will not do that.
Well, except for Donald Trump.
I will have some choice words for our president, etc. You can believe, and for our Attorney General Sessions. But that is because I am criticizing their leadership. I am not going to challenge a person's right to vote the way they want to vote in this country, nor am I going to regard them as stupid or ill-informed or worthy of disrespect because they did so. That is very bad for our country, and it is bad for us as human beings.
Totally fair enough. And I know you mentioned that your concerts are alive things and they're not nostalgia fests, but we have to get a little bit nostalgic because we've got 79 years of you to remember and to deal with.
Yes, you can be nostalgic, but to categorize the entire performance or expect it to be nostalgia is to be misinformed because, number one, yes, Buff will be nostalgic, but it will have current meaning for the children.
Sure.
Where they're in. Yes, Blowing in the Wind was sung by Peter, Paul, and Mary at the March on Washington in 63 and 69. But it has a different vital meaning now.
Well, actually, it's interesting because the meaning of that song is a little bit open. It tells you that you have to wait because we don't know. The answer, we hope the answer is going to be a positive answer. But ultimately, I don't know. How many more bombs are going to drop? Don't know. Answer's blowing in the wind.
Well, what it says is the answer to these eternal questions, and there will always be questions in generations to come, is within us. It is surrounding us. It is not external. It's not going to be given to you. It is our responsibility in our own time to pursue tikkun olam, to do our part. If we don't have to do that, then the entire equation of being on earth doesn't make any sense. Our job on earth is to create justice in our own time and hopefully a legacy of justice that will allow us, as time goes on, to have fewer and fewer egregious violations of decency, justice, fairness, and equity.
I have to say that you definitely went to Cornell, because in this interview already you've used vituperative and egregious. So whatever your issues with Cornell were, they certainly taught your language very well. I'm utterly impressed by that, I should say.
Well, my mother was an English teacher.
Ah, yes.
English speech and drama in high school. We grew up on a single mother's salary, which was no easier then than it is now for school teachers, but she was an extraordinary, powerful, courageous. She was a member of Planned Parenthood when she was in her 20s.
Wow.
And a member of the Teachers Union. She was a progressive, and I inherited her legacy, and I proudly carry it.
Now, is it true that your first inkling of Mary Travers was seeing a picture of her and thinking, with, I don't know if Albert Grossman was involved at that point, but saying, we need a group rather than a solo thing? How did that start?
That was Albert's suggestion. Albert was my manager. It was he that came up with the idea. It was his passion, and I respected him, and I thought, you're right. And together we found the other members of the group, and we started rehearsing. And it was magic. And there was magic from the beginning. And that's how it happened.
And it was, you went to see her, and you just, as soon as your voices came together, you knew that no other person you could sing with would have a sound like that.
Well, yes. I also told Judy Collins, if it doesn't work out with Mary, let's talk.
I didn't know that. Oh, my goodness. Well, it obviously did work out with Mary and Noel, by the way, Noel Paul Stuckey. And people should know, by the way, that you guys also still do concerts together. You are old friends who still musicalize, yes?
Mary passed away almost 8 years ago. And Noel and I are very close friends. And yes, we just did 2 concerts 4 days ago and 5 days ago.
Is he well?
We love each other.
How is he? How's he doing?
He's doing wonderfully, and so am I.
Good. I mean, this is important to people. I mean, we talk politics, but the human angle, it tends to be what people are most interested in, and yeah.
There's a very small distinction in me and in Noel between politics and humanity and caring and personal things. It's all intertwined. It's very Jewish of me, by the way.
Aha! I hear you. Well, speaking of Jewish and things that I'm interested in, how is your colon?
You mean my colonoscopy song?
Well, you did a colonoscopy song on CBS TV a few years ago, but in reference to your having your thing checked, and I assume you're well and all that?
Yes, it's clean. I'll send you a photograph if you're interested.
We can post it on the website. I think that would be absolutely.
I think that's eminently exciting. I think that that's what you want to see is the colon of a 79-year-old.
Well, as you said, if it encourages people who to get checked and saves their lives, again, you're doing tikkun olam. You're repairing a hole in the world, literally.
That's right. My way of encouraging them was to write the song. When I had my colonoscopy, I had a question on my mind. Do we all look the same when the doctor sees us from behind? Then I had the answer. I felt like such a fool, 'cause the doctor smiled at me and said, your colon's really cool. My colon's really... Yes, it is humorous. But what Noel Paul Stuckey emailed me, he said, I laughed, I cried, and I made an appointment.
There you go.
That was my task. Because we lost Mary to cancer, and we're very sensitive to the importance of gathering our hearts together and doing what we can to address the cure for cancer.
Let me ask, was it harder to know her being sick for so long, or was it harder when she actually passed for you guys? Which was more difficult?
Well, Mary's passing is very different for us because she is with me when I sing, whether it's alone or with Noel Paul Stuckey. She hasn't gone. I carry her inside me. And in certain ways, she's more alive now in a way that my mother is more alive within me now than when she was here. So the very premise of somebody's passing is very different when you're carrying a legacy that you created together over 50 years. But it was very hard when she passed because we loved her. But on the same time, by the same token, in a very spiritually hard to understand place, she is with me still. And that's affirmed every time I sing.
Do you have a favorite Mary story or anecdote, something funny or precious to you that from your years knowing her?
Well, yes, it was Mary taking my hand while we were hearing Martin Luther King deliver his I Have a Dream speech saying, Peter, we're hearing history being made.
And it was true.
That was my favorite memory.
I believe it. I mean, that must have been an exceptional, extraordinary moment for you? Is that your all-time favorite moment as a person, as a performer too, or are there a couple of others?
Well, there are many. I mean, when we would sing and we would just look at each other and start crying because we were so passionate. And that happened a number of times.
Does another one specifically come to mind?
Well, there were many of them. There was one where we were being given the Defenders of Democracy Award by People for the American Way, and John Lewis was the same day. And when I was asked, when it was my turn to show my appreciation for the award, I thanked Mary and Noel, and then she thanked me and Noel, and then he thanked her and me. When we started singing again together, we were so moved by each other, we just were all in tears.
Can I ask, do you have a favorite all-time song that you guys did or you did solo, as well as a favorite song that you have never covered that Peter, Paul, and Mary never did?
Well, a favorite song, it's a question of which song is most meaningful on a particular night. Mary used to say, it's like your children. Which child is speaking to your heart that particular day or night? That's what it's about. So it shifts around, but I don't have a song. I do have songs that I wish we had sung. I wish we had sung. Last night I had The Strangest Dream is one song, and I'll be recording it soon with my daughter.
Oh, Bethany, you mean? Yes?
Yes, right.
Oh, that's lovely. By the way, not to get too personal and stuff, but do you have a girlfriend? Or you're not married again, but do you have a social life in that romantical sense?
Yes, I do. I have a significant other for the past 16 years.
Oh, mit Mazel.
And Mazel Tov, right. And my son will be singing with me and playing the bass when I am in Colorado. Plus, Sherry Rubin is one of the leaders of the Anti-Defamation League.
Ooh.
I sang with her at a benefit for the ADL. She's terrific. She'll be singing and playing with me too, plus her daughter will be playing the mandolin. So it'll be quite a group.
That sounds wonderful. And again, I'm going to remind people, one of the concerts that he'll be doing is in Riverhead, New York, on Sunday, August 6th at the Suffolk Theater. Also, if you're here in Colorado with us, on August 18th in Boulder, there will be the Peter Pups and Music Benefit to Stop Puppy Mills. Just a couple more quick questions with Peter Yarrow, and we thank you so much for taking the time with us. But we gotta go backwards in time just a little bit and ask, because one of the segments of this radio program that the producer Dave tends to do is there's a Bob Dylan segment, and we play Bob Dylan music. Do you remember the first time you met Bob Dylan?
Oh, we met him in Greenwich Village. Yes.
Well, yeah.
He was coming there, and he was getting on coffee house stages, and he would write a song was reflected in the newspapers the previous day, and we became very good friends. He lived with me for a while in Woodstock, which is how he got there. Susie wrote the law, and his girlfriend at the time came to live. She wrote a book, by the way, that characterizes and describes the period of time. We were all very good friends.
And then I guess I'll flip the script on this to say, when was the last time you saw Bob Dylan?
Oh, we haven't seen each other in a long time. The last time was actually at Live Aid.
Wow.
Each other, yeah. But we correspond. We are in touch.
Does he seem like the same person he was, or is that impossible? He's sort of an unknowable figure, but maybe he isn't to you, since you lived together.
He has many persona aspects to his persona, and that has evolved over the years, just as his music has. Very complex person, and he's a genius, and he changed music in America, and I am a huge admirer of what he has done.
Do you prefer writing songs by yourself or collaborating? Because one of your big hits was Torn Between Two Lovers, and that was a collaboration with another writer.
Yes, well, Puff the Magic Enter Dragon was a collaboration. I enjoy both.
Is it music first or lyrics first or whichever happens?
Whichever happens.
Cool. Well, Peter Yarrow, it has been absolutely lovely talking politics and other things with you. Because what do you hope for the world? We know what you hope for the world, but what do you hope for yourself over the next 5 years?
I hope that I will be helpful in healing this very, very difficult time. I hope that I will continue to have a platform to do that effectively. And I hope that I'll continue to talk to you on the phone and enjoy your company.
Oh, that's you are welcome back anytime, Peter Yarrow. I wish you health, I wish you mazel, and I wish you music. Shalom to you.
Thank you, my brother. Shalom, my brother. Thank